We're going to take a look at how to access the spiral line and develop the rotational coordination for dancing, and we'll use the floor. For modern dancers or contemporary dancers, they're used to doing this exercise on the floor. For many, many years in dance classes, we've been doing this rolling over, starting from the head or starting from the feet to get the sequential movement and to organize the spine and the limbs in rotation. So anyone who's been in the modern dance world is used to doing this, and also in the world of studying the Alexander technique, they've often used the more flexion and extension model until the work of Raymond Dart became integrated into the Alexander technique in the 60s. So I have talked a little bit about the Dart procedures in some of my other videos where we've talked about the spiral, and specifically we worked in the chair, which is a great way to explore in particularly a ballroom studio where people aren't coming in expecting to roll around on the floor. But there's a lot of value in working on the floor and then working up into the chair and then seeing how you can access the work of the spiral and the leading of the head into the spiral when you're upright and in the dance movement. So today we'll look at it on the floor. It may look familiar to you also as the way that a cat might roll over, where you see their head take their spine into rotation, or the way that a baby learns to move into the upright position. Raymond Dart was an anthropologist, and he originally did his studies in the evolution of movement in humans and their development, but also this has moved then into the study of how the baby goes from the in utero position of complete flexion to how the child learns to roll over and learn to access the curves. These are very helpful with children that have had some disabilities, and either learning disabilities or physical disabilities, who may have bypassed some of these important procedures in their development. We know, for instance, that children who don't have the opportunity to crawl can have some problems with other navigational movements as adults. The spiral, the rolling over, is an important part of the development of the child, just like the crawling and the learning to stand and so on. So I'll just demonstrate on the floor how we might do this. Also a great stress reliever. Now if you have back problems, back spasms or something like that, and you can't twist, obviously it's not a good thing to do. But otherwise it's very good for back pain to work with this spiral. It's a very gentle, sequential moving through the spinal movement without putting a lot of stress on the spine. I'll see how far I get before there's a poodle in the picture, which is right about now. So what I'm going to do is go from a flat position, roll over to the left, and then start with the head and sequentially just allow the movement, the weight of my head to move through, so that I'll turn from the we'll see how this goes. I'll do the first spiral starting from the head and letting the spine follow in sequence, finally taking the hips over and the legs and the feet, and then going into the flexion on the other side. And we'll see if you're going to let me do this. So starting from the head, we're letting the rib cage drop, and then the hips and the legs. Continuing the head rotating, and going into flexion. Unwinding head, neck, shoulders. I have my helper here. You gonna let me finish my spiral, buddy? I can't go into flexion because I have the poodle here. Again, head. Very, very relaxing. And I'm opening up now that spiral line. right here I've got that full stretch in the spiral. If you stay in that position where your head is in opposition to the hips, you'll be in a position that we use quite frequently in dancing and also in ballroom dancing, where we need to maybe have our center towards our partner and our head moving in the opposite direction, and different parts of the body need to be spiraling in different ways. So I'll stay in that position. So if I turn my head strongly, and now instead of just being relaxed, I'll actually work the opposite shoulder down to the floor. We're going to find ourselves in the position, let's say, of a promenade for the lady, where we want to avoid allowing the shoulder into the spiral too early. We're actually opposing where the head is going. Then we'll take it over. And the head. And now as I unwind, I'm going to pin my right shoulder down. So now I'm getting more stretch. So in that position, this would be what the lady would do on a natural turn, rotation to the right, where her head is strongly to the left. So there's a lot of value in practicing this on the floor and sensing the sequential movement in the spine and the separation of the head from the shoulders. And then the next step would be to move it in the chair, which I've done a number of videos, not only demonstrating the spiral in the chair, but also then taking it into different figures and movements that we do in dancing and applying that. Some of the movements that we do in dancing, like let's say a throwaway, oversway, if we looked at the way the lady's shape develops, her spiral is taken from the bottom to the top instead of the top to the bottom. So our normal everyday movements, we lead with our head and follow our head, but sometimes in dancing we have to start on the other end. So if I can work around this little spoiled buddy here, I'll do a spiral now from the opposite. Starting now from the bottom. Letting the weight of the hips and the head come over less. Starting from the bottom. So this is the way, as I was saying, not only a throwaway, it was very obvious in a throwaway oversway because the spiral is so big as the lady's leg moves back and she opens so far. But on any oversway action, that's what we would have. And the same for the man. We would start in the base, work through the rib cage, and finish with the head. Well, now that Gandalf is out of the picture, I will do the bottom to the top spiral. Again, this is an oversway type action that we would do. I'll do it from a different angle now. So that feels really nice on my spine. It's a very nice, gentle movement, a nice thing to do before you start getting more aggressive in your stretching. So if you just want to relax and you want to train yourself at the same time, this is a very good way to organize the body, organize the sequential movement in the spine, and organize the limbs following the rotation. With the spiral that I just demonstrated from the bottom to the top, as we do in most of our picture lines in dancing, is an unusual way for the body to move, because typically someone calls your name, you look, your body follows in sequence, head leading first. You'll see this, as I said earlier, in a cat rolling over. The head leads the spine in the movements that we do in our daily life. So when we begin to dance and we have to move into a rotation or into our line where our head needs to be following the body instead of leading the body, we always find that that's a bit difficult for students to learn. When we're teaching gentlemen, they always turn their head into the lady when they do a right turn in the beginning. And controlling the oppositional spiral is particularly difficult on left turns, where, again, if I'm talking about the leader, as he turns his head to the left, right shoulder comes in. Or simply the head stays straight forward and the head doesn't start developing into the spiral. So these things in dancing are more subtle, and sometimes they're used in the opposite way that we might use them in our normal everyday life. As I said, starting spiral from the bottom, letting the head go last. It's always typical too, our lady students go into a picture line, they're immediately there, instead of letting the spine unwind and letting the head finish the line. So this is the place to start. As I said, it's not something we'll normally do in a ballroom studio where people are in good clothes and come in to dance. You can easily work in a chair or work standing up, but this is the easiest way, the most natural way to actually start to access this feeling and train it in, and then graduate to the chair, then to the dancing.